Okay. Hello, everyone. This is the fourth episode, believe it or not, it's flown by, of our customer facing webinars. So, this is another deep dive into another topic. So, this is where we're trying to bring you a bit more value to highlight the features and the functionality that we've got. And today on the menu, we've got rules and custom fields. Our speaker today is Tom Sams. He's one of our solution architects. So Tom will, in just a moment, walk you through how to utilize rules in different ways within our platform. So feel free, ask us questions anytime. I'll be monitoring the Q&A. Obviously, Tom's going to be busy demoing and presenting, so I'll monitor those and then we'll answer them as and when. A little bit of what to expect. So we'll take a look at creating a new standard and a risk pattern. We will also explore custom fields in more detail and then also how to create a project component. So I don't want to steal your thunder too much, Tom, but that's just a flavour of what's to come. And then at the end, as usual, we always share a few kind of helpful resources and materials so that you're not left thinking, okay, what do we do next? Hopefully we'll give you some guidance for that. Cool. So without further ado, over to you, Tom, to kick off the demo. I will stop presenting. There we go.
Great stuff. So wonderful to be with you all today. As Claire said, please do feel free to post any of your questions into the chat. If you want to direct them directly to any of the participants, then we can also do that as well. Without further ado, let's kind of dive in. So today I've got a bit of an example which I'm using with a basic default configuration. So the way that IriusRisk comes out of the box, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and add some additional customization. The main theme, I suppose, for today is to focus on different types of optimizations we can put in place to really help enhance that automation side of things. So the theme is about time saving, trying to make things go a little bit smoother. Now, some of the key concepts which I'll show are really there just to give you a flavor of how you can set out and start to perform those customizations, optimizations. Of course, in your unique use case, you might actually see some options and capabilities within the platform today that might trigger the thought, what if I could do this? What if I could do that? If that is the case, feel free to ask me any questions via the chat today. And also, of course, you're always very welcome to reach out to your customer success manager or just directly to ourselves as well to talk about actually putting this into place for your individual use case. So within this tenant today, if I start to give you a bit of an example, let's kick off perhaps with talking a little bit about how we can leverage some of the basics of automation, save a little bit of time creating our threat models amongst different types of team members. In order to do that, later on, we'll add some custom fields and some rules. But let's start with a kind of basic high level overview. So if I dive into an example application, here we've got a pretty straightforward SaaS application with, an end user talking via an API gateway into a public cloud. In this case, it's AWS. But of course, on our demonstration today, it really doesn't matter what's within the diagram. The key thing is to talk about customizations. So often within a threat model, you'll find yourself perhaps as you have multiple different threat models across the team, you might reuse multiple components. So in other words, to take a really simple example, perhaps this application services component is reused each time, and this cluster of different components. Perhaps the EKS is reused across multiple threat models. And so there's lots of different ways of kind of automating this process. Now, one of the most straightforward is to leverage the template feature at any point within your diagramming, whether that's when you first created a diagram or when you're actually halfway through, you can still import templates. When you do import a template halfway through, we have an example here of a microservices architecture. I could go ahead and very quickly click import, and it's not going to replace what's within my view. It will actually add it to that view and enable you to actually just pull that straight in. So that's one way we can actually look to do that. So as the system updates, and these are quite straightforward examples. Here we have our new microservices cluster of components here within AWS. Now, I'm mindful that what you're in your case, this may be much more complicated as you're reusing this. Don't fear. You can add a lot of customization, a lot of complexity to this. Let's look at how we actually created that template. So if I go ahead and create a new project, as part of this, I could go ahead and either take an existing project and turn it into a template, or I could start off with the templates themselves. So here, for instance, I might decide, actually, I'll go into templates directly, click on new template, and I'm going to call this one my example microservices architecture. Help if I could spell microservices. There we go. Yep, perfect. And from here, I'm going to go ahead and build out this individual component. Now, I'm actually leveraging today to save a little bit of time the Scratchpad. Now, the Scratchpad is great. You can easily drag and drop components into the Scratchpad to save time, but of course, do bear in mind that that only applies to your user. So your Scratchpad is unique to you. So of course, if you want to share that with others, it's less useful. So here we've got our microservices. Imagine I've just built this out. I'm just going to pop this into a trust zone. So let's put this in AWS and throw that together. Great stuff. And so in order to do that, in order to create our template, we would simply need to go ahead and update this threat model. There we go. So now I've updated this. Any other user within this particular tenant, any other user within IriusRisk can now pull this template in. So there is yet another way of accomplishing this. And that's the way I started to actually do a little bit earlier. So if I head into projects, sometimes it can be really, really helpful if we go back to our SaaS application to actually represent an entire cluster of components as a singular component. So in other words, a custom component that represents all of these components. We actually call that a project component. So in a similar way to the way we just created a template, if I go ahead and select project component, new project, and I'm going to give this one a similar name, so example project component. Yeah, great. So we've got a brand new project. And if I go ahead and build this out again, and I'm going to put in my shape, I'm going to go ahead and generate that model.
A quick note on that, because that's something that's changed, Tom. Because usually it would say update model, but because or whenever you start a diagram, it is by default a blueprint now instead of a full threat model to keep your
Yeah,
license count down. I just wanted to
absolutely.
call that out in case people thought, oh, hang on, that didn't say update, it said generate. So that's why, because it's moved from a blueprint to a full threat model. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Really good point there, Claire. So where was I? Yes, that's right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now create this project component and I'm going to give it a name. So what's quite nice about these, you can actually also give them a category. Now I'm going to put this up to a category called custom because what that's going to do is that's going to make that nice and easy when I want to go ahead and pull those out of the left-hand side of my diagramming canvas. So let's just call this one my custom architecture services. Great. And I'm going to make that visible for everyone. I just wanted to highlight that because you can, of course, create your own. Obviously, typically you would make this visible to everyone, but you don't have to. And so when we go back to our original application, here we go. So it's loaded up. Just going to remove that little bit. Now, as opposed to building this all out from scratch each time, what I could decide to do is head on over to custom, pull in my custom architecture component. And that's now going to have all of the same threats and countermeasures that existed within the original view. So the idea is this is really here to save you a lot of time each time. Now, obviously, once you get to a certain, and you've used IriusRisk for a certain amount of time, you might get to the position whereby you have a lot of different types of templates, and perhaps you've got a multidisciplinary team. You've got a team whereby you have new users regularly joining, building um, new threat models, and they may not know which template to use based on, a particular repository of templates you may have in place. So you might have remembered when I created this new project, there were a host of different fields by default that exist, name, reference ID, as you'd expect, as well as description. But there's actually some white space underneath here, as you can see. And we've got, a bit of a tab here with general written on it. Now I can add a host of custom fields, either, as an addition under additional tab or as an additional field on my project view. And so as part of that, let's go ahead and do that and add a little bit of automation around the rules engine to help us maybe actually automatically allocate a particular template based on a question within the new project view. So and this is just one of the examples of the ways you can use custom fields. Obviously, it's immensely powerful as a tool. So I'm going to create a new group within the project. Now, you can of course also do this at countermeasure layer level, threats or test. I'm going to leave that as project for now for this particular example, but just to make you aware, you can expand this use case out quite a bit. So I'm going to create a new group, and I'm just going to call this one custom for today. There we go, create group. Great. And so within this, I can then decide to add a new field. So I'm gonna do that right now. And I'm actually going to call this one a cloud provider because many organizations use a mixture of AWS, maybe they use GCP, maybe they use Azure as well. And I could decide to make this a required field if I wanted to. I'm not going to do that right now. And within this, I can give a brief description, which is a field or yeah, okay, a field to select um, your chosen cloud provider. You could, of course, call this project. You could, of course, call this any other particular determining factor, which would enable you to select a particular template. I'm just using an example of cloud providers because it's nice and straightforward and probably a pain that a lot of people have. So I'm going to create this as a text data type. We can, of course, create a brand new data type for this. I'm going to do that now as well. So new data type. And I want there to be a multi-selection. So this will be, I'm just going to call this one cloud. Multi-selection available if I want to. I think I'll keep it as it is. Great stuff. So I want to add multiple values. So one of these values will be AWS. So that's what I want. And I'm going to add a new one. The other one will be Azure. Great. So really straightforward. I've just gone in and I've created a new group with multiple values where I can select, a particular vendor. So really quite straightforward. Let's go and just give you a description as well. Cloud without a capital L. There we go. I've got a new keyboard today, so
I
if I
type like that anyway, and I've had mine
yeah,
for years.
no, that's Brad, it's an Apple one, which is okay, but I quite like those big thick keys. Anyway, so here we go. We've got our new custom field that we just built out. We've got a drop-down menu. Now you can, of course, add some conditions to this, so you could make it, editable, exportable. But I'm going to leave it as it is. I think that's great. Let's click create. Keep it nice and simple. So now we've got our field. So when we go ahead and we create a new project. Let's create a new project. Now we've got this new custom example drop down and we can select our cloud provider here and sort of enter what we wanted to enter. So it's quite straightforward, but that's not going to do anything so far because there's no logic behind it. So let's go ahead and let's put some logic in using the rules engine. And I'm going to head on over up to the top right hand side here within rules. And let's create a new rule. So I'm going to call this one cloud provider example. So what we want to do is define specify conditions at the project level. But of course, you can see that we're starting to have additional options around customization for other use cases. So you can, of course, put this at the component level. You can focus on conditions and actions specific to data flows, or perhaps particular conditions around threats. I'm going to keep it simple today and select a project. And we're going to go ahead and select custom field is. So the custom field will be cloud provider is equal to AWS. So we'll start off with that value. So if it is equal to AWS, what do we actually want to do? Well, it would be really good to import that template that we have for AWS. So in advance of the call, I created a couple of templates, one's for AWS, like we just saw in our example, and I've created a similar sort of one for Azure. So I'm going to import that template, and I'm going to select my AWS application template. So we've got that all done, and I'm going to go ahead and click Create. So let's go ahead and create an additional rule. So I'll actually put this in global rules. I could have put this somewhere else, but that's all good. So what I can do now is go ahead and head on back into rules, create new rule, and this one's cloud provider Azure. Or you should call the previous one cloud provider AWS, but it doesn't matter. Project. So I'm going to go custom field is, and just as we saw before, you've guessed it, I'm going to put Azure.
We have a question, Tom, from John. Can you add multiple values?
Yes, yes, you can. Yes, if you
There's no limit. Any limit?
no, you can definitely do that. And you do that using the fact that you can create multiple conditions. I'm going to go ahead and just have it really straightforward to import an individual template here with this one. So I'm going to select Azure and I'm going to click Create. Great stuff. So we've got that there. So that's all perfect. So we've now got our new rule for Azure. So actually now we head back to our projects and we can see those templates that we're going to pull in here. So we've got AWS application, Azure application. Let's go ahead and create a new project. I'm going to head to custom example and I'm just going to select Azure. And we're going to give it a name, example new project. Azure.
What will happen, Tom, if in the new tab you've added, if Azure is spelt wrong?
Nothing.
Presumably, yeah, it's just not going to import.
It's just not going to
It
do
has to be
anything.
the exact text that you've
Yeah,
specified. Yeah.
yeah. That's right. And I could obviously we could add additional logic to that if that's something you wanted to handle. But the user will come in and there'll be nothing in here. Anyway, as you can see here, we've got our new project, which has been added automatically for our Azure architecture. So it's just one way of creating some optimizations. Now, there was another example I really wanted to show you today within IriusRisk and within the example rules. And that was around managing threats and countermeasures for particular use cases. We're also going to use custom fields for this. And this time, as opposed to placing an example within one of these little tabs here, I'm going to place it directly within the general view. And this will be around applying particular threats and countermeasures based on region. So I'm going to keep this nice and simple. Obviously, when we head into our threats and countermeasures, there are lots of different types of standards that we have available. To make this like a nice, straightforward and easy example, I'm going to use the compliance standard of GDPR. And our question will be whether or not this particular application will be located in the EU or a country which is subject to GDPR, like the UK. So let's go ahead and add that. So as part because what I want to do is I want to automatically apply that GDPR standard to any new application which is in that region. So let's create a new custom field. And in this case, I'm just going to create a new field directly. And just call this one region. And this can be probably a little bit more applicable to customers which have application development taking place across different geographies. So maybe those which have application development and apps going into prod in APAC, in the US, and as well as in the EU. And I'm just going to use a text data type here. We're going to create a value for this. So I'm going to call this one region. And I'm going to enable multi-selection. Set a new value. I'm going to just put EU and I'm going to just put subject to GDPR because, of course, you could be technically out of the EU but still subject to GDPR, or you need to be compliant with GDPR. Say, for instance, you're in Switzerland or in the UK. So we've got our value name there. In fact, what I might do to make it simpler is I'll put that here. Save. Perfect. So we've got our nice data type there. And what I could do is I could also add yeah, let's have a custom field group. Cool. So we've got additional conditions here that we can also select, like just like before with visible. You could put a validator in there if it needs to be a max length. I mean, that could be a way potentially clever of also handling if nobody enters any text into that field. I'm going to create this new field. I could make it required, but I'm not going to do that for this example. Cool. So as we go back to our new project creation view, let's do that now. New project. I've now got my region field, which is what I wanted. So let's create a rule, new rule. And I'm going to call this one region GDPR. Now you could make this very granular as a question. You could get it to apply very specific rules, very specific countermeasures and threats. But for now, I'm just going to kind of bulk apply this. So project and custom field is.
Saw the library looking for GDPR.
Yeah,
It's EU GDPR.
yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I always
Yeah,
go to G as well.
there we go. Awesome. So I'm going to mark a particular product countermeasure within this EU GDPR as automatically applied. So let's go and do this. So I'm going to do this for perhaps we'll add create a consent mechanism. Perfect. So we're going to auto require this. There we go. Perfect. So I'm going to click create. Great. So each time we go ahead and create one of these conditions, the action will be to mark this particular countermeasure as required at each stage. Now, obviously, you might decide that you want to do multiple actions each time, and that you will certainly want to do here. So perhaps what I might do is I might go ahead and add an additional one as well. So let's do that again. So add action. So I'm going to again select the EU GDPR one. And I'm going to put that as required as well. And I'm going to select a different one of these. Great stuff. And this little button here, which says override manual actions, just means that should anyone have actually changed this manually to a different state, we could override that. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave that as it is. Click save. So now when we go ahead and we create our project, and we've used, and I've just selected a couple of these for demo purposes, we could obviously go through and select multiple ones. This will now mean that when I create my new project and I specify my new region as EU, this is now going to go ahead and let's just enter a name. Perfect. It's now going to go ahead and automatically apply. So I'm going to drag in one of my applications from the Scratchpad. Cool. So again, that's the Scratchpad can be quite powerful, but it is limited to just that individual user. So what, which is a great thing actually. It's good to be able to save and store your own individual items that you're regularly using without having to change other people's. As you can imagine, this could fill up pretty quickly. Um, so I created this just to save time. And actually now, if we go into threats and countermeasures, you'll see that if I go ahead and actually I have these should be auto implemented based on whether that says EU. So let's just double check I did that. I might need to reload the rules just to make that apply because I have done that quite quickly after doing the rules. So sometimes it does take a little bit of time. So I suspect we'll probably just need to leave that a little bit of time. But either way, what this means is the fact that, without necessarily having to go in and complete the questionnaire, where we're talking about the different types of PII, where we're talking about sort of answering those questions, I could, with one sort of click, automatically apply these pieces of logic, and indeed you could actually expand that out even further to also include particular types of questionnaires based on rules, based on custom fields. So this can really help you kind of bring out that use case. If anyone on the call kind of has a particular use case in mind and they wanted to maybe take a bit of a deep dive into their specific use case, obviously do reach out to your customer success manager, and we can actually arrange to speak to you and actually give you some recommendations on how to accomplish your any sort of automation goals you have around that. Um, and it will be a pleasure to help you in that respect. So far today, we've looked at creating custom fields. We've looked at how we can apply specific types of rules, how we can move threats and countermeasures to different statuses based on those custom fields, alongside automatically pulling in particular templates. We've also taken a look at using project components to speed up and represent probably quite complicated um, clusters of architecture in a singular component. Um, and we've also looked at how we can leverage templates in a dynamic way. Here's our nice little custom component there representing our architecture. You can give it a really nice picture. I haven't done that. I probably ought to have done. Um, but it's a really great way of sort of scaling out your applications, saving a lot of time when you're creating and doing a decent amount of threat modeling um, there as well. Now, I do actually have some custom resources I wanted to share with you to kind of go into a little bit more detail if you wanted to investigate a particular use case yourself. So a really good place to find these is within our documentation. I'm going to go into full screen in a moment on that, but I just wanted to make you aware that that's also accessible at the top right hand side of your screen, and you can go ahead and you can go into that documentation, pull that out very easily straight from within the UI. So I'm going to go into slideshow mode here.
Can I just ask a couple of questions, Tom, before you
Yeah,
go
please.
into that? So I'll try and ask these in the right order because I've had a couple through. Okay, so one question is, can we create our own standards and apply in the same way that you were doing just now?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
awesome.
So that's really quite straightforward to do. You can also obviously create a whole host of conditional logic around those standards. So another way I could have done this is I could have set up the rule to say that if you have a particular field completed with a particular response when you create it, you will automatically apply a particular standard. So I could have taken the whole standard and applied that automatically rather than granularly selecting which specific countermeasures I wanted to move to which status. So that actually would have probably been a more effective way of doing it.
Wicked, thank you. Excuse me. And then can we have multiple countermeasures? That was when you were doing the conditions. You were selecting that the action would be the
Yeah.
count. Yeah.
Absolutely, and we did a few of those. It's so I kind of I chose a couple of those, but you could of course have multiple actions altogether. Wouldn't just need to be within the category of moving countermeasures. You could also perform a completely kind of disparate action, maybe send out an alert or something like that.
And then can we apply the rules to existing product projects? Sorry, really good question. Because obviously you were starting a new one each time.
Yes, you can. You do, however, need to tick that little checkbox, which will override any kind of manual actions, and then update your threat models.
Brilliant. Thank you. I've got about three more. So the next one. Okay, yeah. So I suppose this applies to everything you were showing us. Can anybody do these actions, or
So
is
you
it business unit, permissions based?
the will, yeah. So you would need to be an administrator typically to be able to do that. Now, because RBAC allows you to really granularly control these sorts of permissions, you could in fact be a different sort of state, and then that could be
Mm,
added to your to your role. So that is something you could look into doing. And you would also, of course, need to some of these items which you've seen today are not on community, so it's
yes,
more
yeah.
of an advanced feature set.
Perfect. Thank you. And then this one came to us in the chat. It's quite long. I'll read it out, Tom, for everyone's benefit because they won't see it. But in case you need to reread, it's just in the chat.
Okay.
So IriusRisk countermeasures are component specific. Let's say I need to require data at rest encryption for any database type of component. I don't want to create a separate rule for every database-like component existing and coming in the future. How can I create one rule for all DB-like components and their relative encrypt at rest countermeasures? I appreciate that was quite a lot to take in. I'm just going to paste it for everyone's benefit in case you want to
Thank you.
reread.
Yeah, please. Oh, yes. Okay. So I'm just gonna read that again. Yes. Yeah, they are.
Very comprehensive question.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question.
Yeah.
So, because any database type component, I suppose because you could have database types components which are some which are AWS, which are Azure, so they won't be they won't be within that particular library. We would need to go ahead and select and create a rule for each database kind component. However, if there are only, say, a subset of databases you actually use. So, for instance, you could have, as you know already, no doubt, you have all the different types of databases within Azure, and you only use Azure. That probably wouldn't take very long for us to assist you with. But if you're talking, you want to include, MongoDB, Cassandra, all the databases that exist within the library, that might take a little bit more time to do. So that's probably a question which I would bring to your customer success manager. The reason that I'm saying that is because they will know what sort of technologies you use typically. And because of that, we might be able to kind of help you out in insofar as we could do something a little bit faster than you doing it sort of all manually yourself. So yeah, with that in mind, I think if you definitely a really good one to raise with your customer success manager, and we can then of course support you with that. Yeah. So there are ways of kind of doing that in an optimized way. But that would depend on which sort of databases you typically use.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tom. And then this one isn't specific to the topic of today, but it's still a good question, so I'll ask. I have all design diagrams in Confluence. I don't want to recreate them. If I import and modify, I need to copy them back. Is there a method I can sync with Confluence? And I was going to suggest Jeff
Yes. Yeah,
as the
that's what I
best
would suggest.
route. Yeah,
Yeah, that's probably what I would use. And there are some optimizations we can do potentially with the API as well. And that. So I would reach out to your team on that at IriusRisk. We can look to see how we can support you with that.
yeah.
But definitely, Claire, yeah, that's what I was about to say, Jeff.
Yeah, because we've now got image import capability, Vikas. So you would be able to do that if you essentially take a screenshot of your diagram in Confluence and then upload that in IriusRisk Suite where it says model with AI. You just upload it in there, and then what it does is it maps to the components within IriusRisk. Of course, it may not be 100%, but it's going to get you way closer than starting from scratch. I mean, maybe your confidence diagram is a beauty and you've named everything, even if it's not the same naming convention we use, it's really accurate. So I guess as long as you're not using anything like unusual phrases or things, then it will know, it will map it in that way. And I think there's one more question. I was just going to say that was it. Now we've got another one. Can we also use IriusRisk for threat modeling when onboarding new vendors or business partners? Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's
quite vague, that one. If you could
yeah.
elaborate.
Obviously, it's a little bit. Obviously, Iris Risk is primarily focused within the security domain. I mean,
Mm.
theoretically, there's nothing stopping you kind of going out of that domain, but obviously that would require a lot more customization. But yeah, you could definitely track model both at the functional and architectural level, depending on the level of information that you have on that partner.
Thank you. And then we've got an addition from John. What about updating the Confluence page once you've made a change to your design? Yeah, that's a really good point, John. I suppose depending on so the person that asked this originally, it depends where your single source of truth is. If you want that to be Irius Risk, then of course you can kind of perhaps arguably more dynamically keep up to date with it. But Confluence is also very collaborative. So a lot of our customers start in tools like that. And then over time, they move everything into IriusRisk because, of course, you can export reports as well. You can export into other tools like ASPM. So it becomes kind of that single pane of glass, as the phrase we've heard many times, where lots of people can use it for different things. But then if you have teams that are in a compliance tool most of the time and they just need data from IriusRisk, they're not logging in, then those are some routes available. So I hope that helps. But if not, we've still got another few minutes for a few more questions. But what I will do is share my screen for those last couple of slides. And then what we'll do is we'll do a quick check at the end in case we've missed any. So let me do the right window. Google Chrome. Yes, please, that one. You just confirm you can see that okay, Tom?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Wonderful. So we've done that bit. So the next bit, as Tom began alluding to earlier, you may already be aware of some of these resources, but it's better to say it and not need to. So we're going to share them anyway, only because recently someone was surprised that they didn't realize we had a whole doc site. So we've got a whole documentation site, which is formatted. We align it to the 4-question framework. And basically you can just go through, it's quite helpful even as kind of a self onboarding approach, if that makes sense. So that's worth a look if you haven't already. We, of course, have our YouTube playlist, tons of videos like this one that get recorded and uploaded. So, again, it's worth perusing that to see if there's something in particular that would be useful for you or your teams. And then we have our knowledge base, which is different to our documentation. These are articles. So these are kind of how-tos. You can see the search bar at the top there. If there's something you need to know specifically about custom fields, you can search or you can navigate to that category and you can go and find additional info there. So just wanted to flag that in case that wasn't known. And all of these links, by the way, will be in your follow-up email tomorrow. So don't worry, I can't multitask and talk and copy and paste the links just yet, working on it. So all of these will be in your email tomorrow. And then upcoming webinars, the first one's a bit of a fib because this one happened last month. So in case you wanted to watch back workflows, perhaps you missed that session with our other solution architect, Anna. We'll share the link for that. And then episode 5, that will be happening, I believe it's the 15th of October, and that's around customizing content. And also we'll have our head of professional services on that as well, because obviously a few times, like Thomas said, if you need more info, speak to your customer success manager. Our professional services team is also at your disposal if you need something really unique or you need support with like further optimization, customization. There are a ton of things that we can help you with. And lastly, this webinar isn't product specific. This is something different, but it's next Tuesday and is actually really beneficial if you need to demonstrate value to executive teams, senior leadership teams. This one is also worth a watch and, almost a bring your boss, you could call it. So this is really great. And we've got a guest speaker who's fantastic and he advises local government and things like that. So again, that was another one we just wanted to signpost. Okay, let's just do the final check for questions and then we shall call it a day. Oh, okay, yeah. So you need some more info. Someone has said so they're going. Okay, I'm just going to grab your email address, no problem. We have answered all the questions. So that is that. Thank you all very much for your time today. Tom, massive thank you to you for sharing your wise knowledge and expertise. It's much appreciated. And we hope to see you all again on the next one, which is in a few weeks. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you.